Father, 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 everybody thinks we're wrong. But who are they to judge us simply 'cause we smoke the bong? You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today, 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 today. Ooh, oh, 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 ooh, ooh. Mother, mother, there's far too many of you crying. Brother, 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 far too many of you dying. You know you got to find a way to bring some loving here today, here today, here today. Father, 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 we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, no drug war. We don't need that hate, no we don't, 'cause we just got to find a way to bring some love in here today, here today, here today. Picket signs and picket lines don't punish me with your brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see what is going on. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. Oh, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? This is Legalize It CNY's premier podcast. We're coming to you directly live right now, but you won't see it live, but I'm working live. From LICNY Studios right here in beautiful downtown Rome in the heart of the Arts District. And glad to be here on this Sunday. I didn't know what I'd talk about this first show because, you know, I have volumes of information. I have encyclopedias of it, hours and hours of video and all kinds of things to say. If you know me, I don't often run out of gas. But upon making that decision this morning, I opened up the newspaper, and right there in front of me was our daily rationing of bullshit. So let's get to it, shall we? This morning is a Utica Observer-Dispatch right here in Utica, New York. Put this right on the front page. And it's awesome, isn't it? Let's unpack it, shall we? He started smoking marijuana daily in his 30s to improve his health. He doesn't have an illness that can be treated with medical marijuana. He simply smokes, eats edibles, and sometimes vapes recreationally instead of drinking alcohol heavily, which had started to take a toll on his body. Sounds like he did something good for himself, is what it sounds like to me. Over the last 2 years, he said, I lost about 35 pounds. said this professional financial services guy who is keeping his identity a secret because, can't let people hear about that. But he says his physical and emotional health, my mental health and emotional health are much better. But the physical health is also much better as well. Sounds like another good move, doesn't it? But he acknowledges it might not be such a positive effect for everyone. Works for me, but probably not for you. Okay. So the governor has plans, yes, to legalize marijuana, in addition to the medical marijuana, which the state launched a program for in 2016. The New York State Medical Marijuana Program, folks. One of the most ill-conceived jokes of a medical marijuana program in the nation. All you get to use are some oils, vaporizing oils, which incidentally were initially filled with methyl ethyl bad stuff, like polyethylene glycol and propylene glycol, things you definitely don't want to be heating up and sucking into your lungs, but that was cool with the state government from 2016 until now. And that has some asking from a health perspective, how safe is smoking a joint or gobbling up a pot-laced brownie? It's a loaded question, and the answer is complicated and incomplete. It's neither. We've uncomplicated that a million times over, and it doesn't get much more complete than the information we have if you look for it. Marijuana, there's over 100 compounds in it. No, there are more than that, actually. We've discovered over 100 cannabinoids, beneficial compounds. And looks like there's going to be probably closer to 200, said Dr. Assistant Medical Director of the Emergency Department of the St. Luke's campus of the Mohawk Valley Health System. Okay, let's see how to get to page A6. This might take a minute. A5, 6. Okay, and there's marijuana. The doctor advises caution. We just want people to be very careful when we make decisions. I just want people to understand that there are real health consequences to marijuana that they should be aware of, he said. Those health consequences aren't nearly so well understood for marijuana as they are for prescription drugs, which go through intensive review before receiving Federal Food and Drug Administration approval, or even for alcohol and tobacco. We just don't have the data on marijuana, said Dr. Thomas Madadavasti, president of the Medical Society of the state of New York. I've never heard of that society, and it would probably behoove us to find out who's in it, who finances it, who funds it, and what their goals are. There's usually some answers there. That's largely because it's hard to study pot. That's true. Marijuana, like heroin and LSD, is a classified Schedule I controlled substance, meaning it has no medical use, according to the DEA, and has high potential for abuse. Researchers need a federal drug enforcement agency license to study it. Yeah, we know all about that, and we know that it's been nearly impossible to get decent product for researchers to use. Yeah, we know all that information, but cannabis has been around. Cannabis has been around for about 3,000 years. It was originally in the United States a pharmacopoeia. There were over 3 million prescriptions for it in one form or another a year prior to it being illegalized, I believe in 1942. The reasons for which that happened are well publicized and well researchable, but they have nothing to do with the plan itself and everything to do with keeping a certain group of people down. So we need to parse any information we get with the history of cannabis with the facts. So the doctor needs to point out these horrible negative effects. So we'll share them with you. There is, of course, some research, and it has highlighted some areas of concern. Now, this is what you need to understand. There is, of course, some research. Really? Which research are you talking about? Because if you look at PubMed, you'll find thousands of studies, peer-reviewed studies. And in other countries, they're studying it like crazy too, particularly Israel. That being said, let's go on. Most experts in mental health and drug abuse feel very strongly that recreational use is a bad idea. Most experts and some research, and nobody says which research and nobody says which experts, some people, and it's not clear how many, have bad reactions to marijuana that include temporary psychosis or loss of reality. Some people, and it's not clear how many, boy, we're really zeroing in, aren't they? Have bad reactions and loss of reality, temporary psychosis or loss of reality. And severe psychosis may trigger event for chronic mental illness, he said. And severe psychosis may, so I'll unpack it again. Of course, some research, we don't know. Most experts, we don't know. Some people, we don't know because it's not clear how many have had bad reactions or loss of blah, blah, blah. He says, there's also emerging data, he said, to show a negative impact on adolescent brains. Emerging impact, you say. Emerging data, you say. It doesn't take long to find one or two studies, analytical studies actually, and find out who funded them and why those have been found to be foolish. Marijuana use in younger people could potentially mean not reaching your full intellectual capacity. It could happen. It could. Anything could happen. You see where I'm going with this? And that doesn't mean just teenagers. Most experts in the field, who are they? Do they include other states where whole medical offices, whole medical services have been set up centered around cannabis for treatment? They must not be in with most experts. Then there's the lung health. There's not a lot of data. There's not a lot of data on the effect of pot smoke in the lungs. But what exists is negative, he said. Oh! What exists is negative, he said. Look it up, folks. One of the most respected, peer-reviewed studies in our lifetime was done in 2006 at UCLA by a Dr. Donald Tashkin, where he interviewed, I believe it was, 1,200 to 2,000 cancer patients with diseases of the upper airways and lungs. The doctor fully expected to find in his study that cannabis smokers, particularly long-term heavy smokers, would measure high in numbers of all those cancer patients. So you can look it up, but the doctor in the UCLA study basically divided the group of cancer patients into different groups. So you had tobacco smokers, cannabis smokers, smokers of both, and non-smokers in the study. Guess which group has the fewest number of cancers and diseases of the upper airways and lungs. Not the non-smokers, the cannabis smokers. That's right. Excuse me, the long-term cannabis smokers. I did want some background music here. Yes. Yes. Why, you little... Okay, that's what I meant to have all along. Okay. So Tashkin's study is one of the most respected ones that there are. And there's many other ones that share that information too. So the doctor does say anything you put in your lungs that's not air is not usually good for you, he said. Well, that's usually true. And as Donald Tashkin's study revealed, what's usually true is not always true for cannabis. Cannabis kind of breaks the norms, crosses some bridges, does miraculous things that we have yet to understand, and we should really make every effort to understand them more, because many people believe there's possibly, I don't like to use the term miracle, but there's possibly some great, fantastic health benefits that we have yet to discover in cannabis. So, Dr. deals with talks about potency issues. Said he doesn't see many patients who come to the ER because of marijuana. Oh, really? And if you did, what would you do for them? Well, we know you basically tell them lay down and relax. We'll give you some oxygen, maybe an IV of normal saline if it makes you feel better. But yeah, just relax. If you took too much marijuana, if you took too much of an edible, although you can hitch your wagon to something that you don't like, it's really not dangerous. It's really not a medical emergency. In fact, in other states, ERs have said, for goodness sakes, if you eat too much edibles, stay the hell home. Just go to bed. You'll be fine in the morning. So, but here's what doctor says. If you're going to smoke pot, for the love of God, please don't drive. He said your reaction times are going to be slower. You're going to feel more relaxed. I can't give people advice because no one knows how much is okay, especially because the potencies are different and there's no way to determine how impaired someone is from marijuana. So, doctor, there's no way that people can exercise personal responsibility and know for themselves when they should or should not be driving if they're impaired on anything and or everything. It really doesn't matter, doctor, if you're impaired on alcohol, cannabis, prescription drugs, coffee. Emotional upheaval could cause people not to be able to drive. So if you shouldn't be driving, that's a pretty easy call from inside yourself. One that I believe, and I absolutely do exercise myself, I don't drive impaired. And you're never really going to find some kind of a test that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that someone is impaired based on a blood or any other chemical or bodily fluid analysis. So the doctor says he also occasionally sees patients, particularly younger people, who have never tried marijuana before, with the paranoia and psychosis. Yes. He occasionally sees patients, particularly younger, Bullshit meter going off there, folks. I have to call bullshit on that. Okay, just stop. He occasionally sees particularly younger who have never, and they're now paranoid and psychotic. Okay. All right, then we talk about crossbreeding marijuana plants has made pot steadily more potent or rich in the psychoactive THC over the past few decades. Well, that might be partially true, Pot is pottier. Is it necessarily more dangerous? Because over the years we've figured out how to grow healthier, more robust, more greener, more natural plants that are capable of delivering what Mother Nature has intended them to deliver. only in greater numbers. I just don't see that as a bad thing. The reason it's not a bad thing is because cannabis users have those two magic words, and I think most of us who use it would agree. The words are, I'm good. I'm good. Put 4 people around a joint of the strongest cannabis in the world, 4 people with a varying experience with cannabis, 4 people from novices to hardcore users, and they'll drop out of the circle when they've reached the point at which they feel they want to feel. You pass the joint around, it gets to you a second time, you step back and say, I'm good. So it really doesn't matter how strong cannabis is, no more than it matters on the surface how strong alcohol is. 3-2 beer, which they have in some states, it's awful, still exists right alongside Everclear and 151 rum. So you can buy varying potencies of all kinds of things. You can buy extra high caffeine drinks that have 10 times the caffeine and a cup of coffee. And those things can actually be dangerous. So let's move on. The doctor points out that ER doctors only see the bad reactions to pot, not all the people who just feel good. Really? Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm missing something there, but did anybody ever call the ER and say, what do? I just smoked some weed and I feel great. Of course you don't get the reports of people. No one calls the ER and says, I didn't rip my leg open today. It's a good day. All right. Ridiculous. He said he's hoping for one good consequence if marijuana is legalized, a reduction in the use of synthetic pot. Don't call it synthetic pot, you asshole. Plant material sprayed with chemicals is not synthetic pot. It's dangerous. It's horrible. When it was around here, we had a true crisis. People were screaming, taking their clothes off and biting off their own limbs. People were in the ERs with heart problems, and I believe a couple people did die from that garbage. Don't compare that garbage to cannabis. It's not cannabis. It never was, never will be. I agree, though. The stuff is nasty. You have literally no idea what you're buying. Why is this information even in with an article about cannabis? Shame on the author. It's bullshit. Given the research that cannabis shown, the use of actual marijuana and what it still isn't known, he'll advise patients to just say no. Okay. But as you said, no one's asking you. I'm certainly not. Based on my knowledge, which is very limiting, I would say it's not a helpful substance and it's potentially harmful, and I would advise them against doing it. Good for you, Doc. What would you advise them to do? Now compare them, the people that use cannabis, to the other substances out there that people use recreationally. You would advise them not to use the least dangerous one there is? Give me a break. So the 35-year-old Utica user doesn't agree with that assessment, but did agree that there needs to be more research into the pros and cons of marijuana so people can make better informed choices. While he doesn't see any downsides to recreational marijuana use when it comes to his own health, he did research the possible side effects before trying it. And he doesn't think pot is safe for everyone. What does he base that on? He doesn't see any downside. He did research the possible side effects before deciding to try it, but he doesn't think pot is safe for everyone. You just make it up as you go along, I guess. I don't get it. There are side effects for certain people that definitely should not use marijuana. He said anybody with any kind of mental disorder, schizophrenia, and stuff like that, using is not a positive thing for them. Well, that's probably true. And I guess I'd have to go along with it. It's probably not. However, it actually can be very calming for people with hyperactivity. And we've seen that again and again and again, and how it works with the neurological systems. So I think we have to even suss that information with the appropriate number of salt grains. So, and in closing, he says, honestly, anybody under 25 with a developing brain really probably shouldn't use, in my opinion. Okay. I would certainly agree for kids, and no one is trying to put cannabis in the hands of kids. But we need to decide at what age is a minor not a minor. So whatever that age is going to be, you should become an adult for everything under the law, or an adult for nothing under the law. So if you can't use cannabis at 25, nor should you be able to buy a cigarette, a beer, or be drafted into the military. So on the bottom here, you can see, maybe you can bring this up a little closer. There's the OD reporter who wrote this article. And there are a couple more in there today too, but they kind of just rehash information that's been out for a long time. I found this one to be relatively remarkable today, and I thought I'd answer it. So that's all on today's news. This being the first LICNY podcast, I just wanted to once again welcome everybody. I think I'm probably going to record one each Sunday. It seems to be a time that works for my schedule, and a time I can kind of get my thoughts together. We may do, and I definitely will do some live podcasts, bring some guests in here, and we'll let you know when those are. Most likely, I will record those on Sundays as well. I'm not sure, though. That may depend on the guest schedules. But this promises to be a gas, and I like to mess around with music a little bit, and this is how it's going to be. So, thank you for watching. Hope I get to talk to you again real soon. I may chime in here from the podcast room with little snippets as things come up during the week, but I do have every intention to record at least one show a week. It looks like this one's closing on a half hour, and I haven't even begun to run out of gas. So we're at over 28 minutes here. So, shameless plugs. The LICNY podcast studio is located not only in downtown Rome, New York, in the beautiful downtown Rome's Arts District. It's located in a room in the back end of Gary's Music Store, a store I've owned for over 36 years. And in the back of Gary's Music Store is GIGS, the acronym for Gary's Indoor Garden Supply, where I do sell all things to grow all things, particularly cannabis. So if you've been looking for a good grow store in Central New York and a staff of one who is very passionate about the plant, has studied it in great length, both in cultivation and in theory, come in and talk to me about that. And here in the store and gigs, we also have a full line of CBD products for you from a few great vendors. CBD is fast becoming very, very popular, and with great reason. So do your own research on that. And in the meantime, once again, on behalf of GIGS, Gary's Indoor Garden Supply, Gary's Music Store, LICNY, and all of our members, please support what we do. Tell your friends. Comment on here. Leave me some comments about things you'd like to see on the show, topics you'd like to cover, guests you'd like to have on. If you'd like to be a guest, if you've got something to say, by all means, tell me about it. We can do this. This is Gary signing off for now. LICNY's very, very, very first podcast. Thank you so much for stopping by. God love you. Peace and pod.